We're going to replace our alternator today, located just to the left of your front catalytic converter. Go ahead and disconnect our battery using our 10mm socket. Pull off that ground terminal, set it aside. Go ahead and grab your upper engine cover, just gently pull upward and set that aside. Now we want to go ahead and disconnect our serpentine belt, so we're going to use our 14mm socket on our tensioner. I'm going to push up on that and reach under and just work that belt off. And then we'll slowly release this. Using our pocket screwdriver, we're going to go ahead and lift up on this little tab. I want to work this harness off of this bracket. On the front side, there's a 10mm bolt holding that bracket. Pull off the rubber boot here. That's going to expose another 10mm nut. I'll loosen and remove that and pull that cable off. On the back side of our alternator is our wiring harness. You want to push in on this tab and pull the harness out. So push in, wiggle that off like so. What we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and disconnect a couple other pieces of this harness here. That's going to allow us to have a little more flexibility of this here. Let's go ahead and disconnect this harness right here. We're just going to push it on the spring tab, pop that off. On the top here, do the same with this harness, pry up on that little tab. Here we go. On the top side of the alternator, you're going to find a 14mm bolt right here. We're going to pop a gear wrench in there. I'm going to go ahead and loosen that. Work that bolt past the hose here. Go ahead and set that aside. Now the lower bolt on our alternator is right here. We're just using the bar to show you where it's at. We're going to use our deep 14mm socket with our ratchet. We're going to get it loosened and remove that. Now if you have a long ratchet, that'll really come in handy. I'm trying to get that leverage on that bolt. And we'll just loosen this and remove it. And down here, going to our AC system, there's going to be some connectors. I want to go ahead and disconnect those as well. I'm going to reach down, push in on this little tab. Pop that one off. This little plastic tab right here went through this little bracket. We're able to use our pocket screwdriver and push down on this tab here and work that connector or that little retainer clip out. Let's go ahead and press in on this tab here. I'm going to disconnect this as well. Okay, this will allow us to pull this harness aside. On the back side, lower portion of our alternator, between the alternator and the exhaust manifold, there's a bracket that bolts to the block on the back side over here, and then it goes over to the back side of the alternator. We're going to use our 12mm socket and extension to go ahead and loosen and remove this bolt. Now there's a wiring harness that goes to a sensor down on the back behind the air compressor. There's a plastic retaining clip that is holding that harness in place. It's attached to that bracket. We're simply going to use our trim tool. I'm just going to get in there and pop that little bracket off there, the little plastic clip, and separate that harness. Once that harness is free, you can now go ahead and grab your alternator. And we're just going to persuade this out and around. Be careful bringing this up. You don't want to damage a radiator. And pull it out. I want to go ahead and swap this bracket onto your other alternator. It's a 12mm bolt right here. Going to loosen and remove that. There's your bracket and your bolt. I'm going to go ahead and line up your bracket on the back side of the alternator. Should fit into a little notch right so. Let's go ahead and tighten that down. Make sure that's good and tight. Let's go ahead and install the alternator. Pull that harness aside and get that alternator lowered down. Just work that pulley around your radiator hose there. Go ahead and install the plastic clip from this wiring harness onto the bottom of our bracket. Go ahead and work our alternator up into place. We're going to get our 12mm bolt started on the bracket on the back side. I'm going to go ahead and get this bolt started. Now we're not going to tighten it down. We want to be able to leave this alternator a little bit loose so we can go ahead and get all of our other bolts started. Just going to install our bolt on the lower portion of that alternator. Now this is where leaving the alternator loose, we should be able to manipulate this around a little bit. Just going to install the upper bolt. We did put a little bit of anti-seize compound on those threads. Let's go ahead and work that in. And I'm going to get that bolt started. So we got the upper threads caught. We're going to thread that in, but we're not going to tighten that down. It's going to tighten down this back bracket bolt. With that bracket bolted to the block and secured, the lower forward bolt lined right up, and we're able to get that threaded right in. I'm going to go ahead and snug that down now. And the front bolt here, just want to make sure that we're good and tight. Here we have it. Go ahead and tighten down the upper bolt. And we'll snug that down. Once all three of those bolts are done, we can now go ahead and start installing a wiring harness. I'm going to work our way top to bottom, install harness into that clip, sensor, press it into here, it pop in. We have our bracket right here. Press this in. There we go. Take our wire here, get that lined up. We're going to get that nut started. Have a harness right here. Press it on, you'll hear it and feel it click in. Then we just work our way down to our lower sensors down below. Over AC. Okay, we're all connected below. Let's go ahead and tighten down this nut here. Tighten that down as far as you can by hand, and then we'll just snug that down. Once that bottoms out, just a hair bit more. Go ahead and put that rubber boot on there. We have our 10mm bolt that goes right here on the front of the harness. Once it bottoms out, just a little bit more, and everything is nice and tight. With our tensioner pushed back, we'll get our belt onto our idler. Make sure that the belt is on all of the other pulleys properly. And it looks like all of our pulleys are lined up with our ribs on the belt. And your alternator belt is installed. You can go and install your engine cover. Go ahead and connect your ground cable here. And let's go ahead and snug that down.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.